And if you guys could just let me know real quick that you can see the PowerPoint. Okay, I'm about to blow it up on full screen, but just let me know if you can see the screen. All right.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh,
Yeah, we're good.
cool.
Yep, we're good.
Just a quick reminder, guys. I'm going to mute everybody as I'm about to get started. But as you're calling in, make sure if you can mute your own mic, please, and we'll hold questions till the end. All right, awesome. So thank you guys for coming tonight. As you guys may have seen in the message, I think this was a perfect time for me to do this conversation again because I did. We had our daughter born on Memorial Day at 3:55 a.m. So we're definitely psyched about that. We just got home this afternoon, and this is just her getting home for the first time and seeing her brother. So this has been an awesome day for us. Awesome past couple days. And I just want to revisit this topic again because this is a very popular topic for a lot of us in here, parents, or going to be parents, or people just in general wanting to know how to build wealth for their children eventually. This is a great conversation starter to how to go about it. Okay, sorry, I just muted it all again real quick. So quick introduction of myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is Sean Cranston. I go by TheWealthDad on social media and on this Discord. I just turned 29 recently at the end of April. I've been investing for about 6 years now. When I started about 23 years old, my very first investment was in my company 401k plan. It was a very small contribution. It was just, I think it was like $50. But that was my first quote unquote investing into the stock market, although I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. And then that kind of motivated me to start reading more about investing, getting comfortable with the stock market. And then I just pretty much read every book that I could on investing and finance over the next 2 years. And then it led me into essentially my philosophy of finance and investing, which was centered around index fund investing. I wrote my own book on it, my ebook, Index Fund Investing 101. It's sold over 3,000 copies now. What it teaches readers is essentially everything that they'll need to know about index fund investing, ETF investing, how to build your own portfolio using sample portfolios with the exact funds to use, and then how to manage it over time. This is going to be like asset allocation, rebalancing your portfolio in a taxable account and a retirement account, so you don't have to hire a wealth manager to do it for you. But it's essentially just a quick basic guide on how you could get started in investing in your own index fund portfolio. I list occupation all the time too, just to show everybody that you don't have to be a finance major per se. I work in kind of IT and data. I haven't touched an actual like piece of finance work ever in my career. I actually studied criminal justice in college and did a career change to data. But this is always just to show people that you can learn this, you can build wealth without going to Harvard, Yale, Wharton, any of these business schools. You can learn this on your own. You just have to stay committed. You just being on this Discord is committed enough. You're seeing how everyone's building wealth. Good on you. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well outside of the Discord. And that's just at TheWealthDad. You can find me, my @ TheWealthDad. Sorry, all guys, please mute your mics as you're coming on as well. Thank you. So Wealth Son portfolio. This is our oldest son. This is weird now talking because both of our kids are here now. It was just him for about the past 16 months now. He was essentially getting all of our efforts for building wealth for him as our firstborn. We opened up a 529 for him initially, and then made the switch when he was about 2 or 3 months old to the custodial account. The technical name is a UTMA account. And then we sold off the holdings in his 529. We paid a little bit of taxes and fees to do that, but his earnings weren't that big, so it wasn't a big hit. And then we put those proceeds into his UTMA account. It's a 100% stock portfolio, built only off of index funds. Like I said, we're index fund investors, so we do what we know best, and then we do it with him as well. He has a 70-30 split between the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund and the Vanguard Total International Stock Market Index Fund. So it's a global portfolio. He's just reached about $15,000 in his account. right now. We're pretty proud of that for him. Like I said, he's only 16 months old. This is a little chart progression, how it's done this year. We put in about $400 a month for him based off of this asset allocation, and we just let it grow over time. If you want to know a little bit more about why we did the change for him, anybody can ask me that in the questions and answers later. And I'll be more than happy to kind of explain a little bit more why we did the 529 to custodial account. So topics today, we're going to talk about the 4 main topics available to you. These aren't the only 4 options that are available to you to build wealth. There's many other options. There's trusts. There's people who use real estate rental properties. But these are 4 main kind of accounts that you can get started on your own and start thinking about for your children. So option 1, 529 account. Option 2, custodial account, which is UTMA. And then we're going to go over each of kind of like a commonly asked questions of each of these accounts. These might be questions that you've been asking yourself, questions I've been seeing in the Discord, and then also questions I've been seeing on like Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity, their sites as the commonly asked questions. And these will probably help answer your questions as well. We'll go over fees because that's always going to be important when you're building a long-term portfolio. Options 3 or 4, or 3 and 4 is going to be opening up a taxable brokerage in your name, not the kid's name, and then eventually transferring the assets to them later in life. And then option 4 is the Roth IRA. This is starting their retirement account way ahead of time and giving them a leg up. And then the final PowerPoint, I'm going to give you guys a little picture update of Wealth daughter. Her name's Scarlett, when she was born yesterday, and we'll show you kind of where we're at with her plan right now with her UTMA account, how we started saving up for it, and I'll walk you through how.
What'd you say, mommy?
The UTMA account. Sorry. So option 1, 529 account. This is good. This is the most famous account, most likely that everyone has heard of for investing for their children. So this is an investment account that is used primarily for future education costs. This is college, private school. Think if you want to send your kids to private school in like middle school, high school, you can use a 529 for this as well. And there's 529 plans are offered by both states and your big financial institutions like Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity. Many more financial institutions offer 529 plans. But the major benefits of 529s, they have a triple tax benefit if you use them properly. So if you open up, the first one is tax deductions up front. If you open up a 529 with your state plan, there's a good chance that your state is going to offer you a tax deduction from your contributions. For instance, I live in the state of Virginia. They give you a $4,000 tax credit per child. So for instance, if I had, well, I do have 2 kids. So 2 kids, if I put in $4,000 each for both of them, totaling $8,000, I can write off that entire $8,000 off of my state tax deductions in that year of contribution. So that's a nice benefit if you're going to open up your 529 through a state. It's also tax-free growth. Just like your retirement accounts, our IRAs, 401ks, the money is going to grow tax-free. So you're never going to have to report capital gains every year like you will brokerage accounts, your dividends, none of that. That's all going to grow completely tax-free while it's in there. And then so long as you use the money eventually for essentially educational expenses, the withdrawals are going to be tax-free. So it's kind of like a Roth IRA in that it's growing tax-free. And the withdrawals are tax-free. But like I said, you've got to make sure that you're using using qualified educational expenses to get that tax-free withdrawal. So commonly asked questions about 529. Main one, will I get penalized for withdrawing the money for non-education expenses? Let's say if I wanted to, or the child wanted to take money out for real estate or business per se. There is going to be a penalty, but it's going to only be on the earnings, which is very nice. I actually thought this was the 10% penalty applied to contributions and earnings when I first opened my 529 for my son, but it's actually only on earnings. And you're going to owe federal, state, and possibly local taxes as well on those earnings if you use it for anything else other than non-education expenses. Who can you open the account for? Starting with yourself. If you want to go to school, maybe in like 5 or 10 years, and want to go back and get your master's or bachelor's or whatever the case, you can open it for yourself. You can open up through your state and get the tax deduction for yourself and growth for you if you want to. You can open up for your child, grandchild, another family member, brother, sister, even unborn children. We actually, when we opened up my son's 529, we actually opened the 529 in my name because we didn't have his social security number. You're going to need their social security number for all these accounts, or for a 529 and custodial account. So to get around that, we opened it up in my name, started contributing money every month, probably a couple months before he was born. And then by the time he was born, there was about $4,000 to $5,000 in that account. And then with 529s, you can transfer the beneficiary at any point in time. So we just simply changed the beneficiary from myself to my son. And then he essentially inherited that $5,000 529 account for free. Essentially, there was no taxes or fees to do that. Can you use 529 money for K through 12? So I mentioned this before. A lot of parents want to go the route of putting their children in private school as opposed to public school. And you can use your 529 money for this. The only, this is different from if you were to use money for college per se, where you can use any amount of money you want. When it's for K through 12, you can only use $10,000 per year per student. So if you've got two kids, one in 7th grade, one in 10th grade, they're going to a private middle school and high school, you can use, or you can contribute $10,000 for each of them for a total of 20 grand, but you can't go above that. There's the cap on that for the K through 12 using for your 529 money. And what qualifies as an educational expense? Here's just a small list. This list is constantly updating and getting added to. So I would always consult with a CPA if you've got one for your family to see, or when you're essentially going to do the withdrawal for your money, see if that what you're planning to withdraw for qualifies for an expense. But so far it's college tuition, trade and vocational school tuition has been added in the past couple of years. This is your plumbing school, electrician school, mechanic. Also required apprenticeship program expenses. So if you're an apprentice in a apprenticeship from one of these trade or vocational schools, possibly all of your materials and expenses you'll need for that apprenticeship can be written off as a qualified educational expense. Also room and board, fees, books, school supplies, and any type of hardware and software. So think of like, if you're going to college, you need a laptop and you also need to install like Microsoft Office. All of that's going to be able to qualify as an educational expense, and you won't have to worry about paying money on or paying any type of fee. That's all going to work out just fine for your tax-free withdrawals. So option 2, UTMA account. This is where we're living right now for my son and eventually our daughter. This is the option that we ended up going with. So the definition of a UTMA account, a custodial account, it's an investment account that is owned by the minor, but it is managed by a custodian. So what that means, let's use my situation for an example. My son is the owner of the UTMA account, but it is managed by me. What that means is essentially is he's always going to own this. So where I said in the 529 that we could transfer beneficiaries at any point because I was technically the owner of the account, I can't change the beneficiary of a UTMA because he is the owner and I don't have those rights to do it. So you've got to be very careful with the UTMA when you're opening an account, because once it's opened, you can't change that beneficiary ever. They're the account owner in charge. But like I said, you are managing it, but they're going to be the owner when it gets down to the nitty-gritty details of it. The benefits of a UTMA, there's an unlimited contribution limit. There's a little note here about amounts above $15,000 will incur a federal gift tax. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the slide, so don't get too caught up in that right now. But you can essentially throw in any amount of money that you would possibly want in a UTMA account, which is nice. 529s have pretty large contribution limits as well. I think they're like $300,000 to $500,000 for 529. So they're both for almost essentially unlimited if you kind of think about it. This is the main benefit though. There's no penalty if the funds aren't used for education expenses. This is kind of what gets a lot of people caught up in 529s is they don't want that money to be exclusively for schooling later in life. They don't want that 10% penalty. This is where the UTMA comes in. There's no penalty. So if the child doesn't end up doing school, let's say they want to buy their own home at 21, 23, 24, they can use their UTMA account to buy the funds without incurring that 10% penalty fee. Essentially just a taxable brokerage account. And anyone can open and or contribute on behalf of a child, which is nice as well. So you can open these for other people's children, your children. The thing is though, you need to have their social security number and you have to be very careful because UTMAs, I'm going to talk about this, I believe in the frequently asked questions, they carry a lot bigger weighting when it comes down to federal financial aid later in a child's life. So when they're applying potentially later, since they're the owner of this account, when FAFSA reads this, it's going to say so-and-so child has all this money. They don't need as much financial aid. So it's definitely a bigger hit than it is with a 529. So you've got to be very careful with this. I don't really recommend you opening this for someone else's child because the parent might not know that. You might not know that, and that could cause some headaches down the road when they're applying for financial aid. So commonly asked questions for UTMA accounts. Do these accounts grow? Let me move this, can't see. Do UTMA accounts grow tax deferred like 529s? No, but the good news is they are taxed at the child's lower rate as opposed to your rate. So what does this mean? We'll flow right into question 2. The first $1,050 in earnings are completely tax-free. So if you're just buying and holding stocks or index funds and ETFs and you're never selling, you're not reporting any capital gains, you don't have to worry about that. But if you are receiving dividends every quarter, let's say in year 1, you receive $300 in dividends on your UTMA, that's going to be tax-free because it's underneath that $1,050 tax-free mark. But the next $1,050 after that first $1,050 are going to be taxed at the child's rate, which is 10%. And then once you get to, if the account's growing large enough and it has a large enough value to where earnings are above $2,100 a year, you're going to pay at your tax rate. So if your tax rate is in the 24%, you'll pay 24% on any earnings above $2,100. Can you change the beneficiary of the UTMA? This is the one I just talked about. No, this is almost one of the biggest important, probably the most important bullet point. If you're going to go down this road, you've got to be like 3,000% sure this is what you want to do because you cannot change it after this. You can't put like $10,000 into a UTMA for your son and then 7 years later you get cold feet or if you don't think he's going to be, I don't know, if you're worried about him having the money, it doesn't matter. It's in his name. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. You can't go back and try to change it to your name. It is in his name. So be very careful that this is the option that you do want to go down. I don't want that to scare you. Like I said, I'm using this option for my 2 children. I'm not worried about it at all, but you do have to just be mindful of that. And last question, can I choose when my child receives control of the account? Unfortunately, no. That would be very nice. I think this would make this almost the most attractive option if you could. But depending on the state you live in, the child is going to receive full control of this account anywhere from 18 to 25 years old. You can check your state online by just doing a simple Google of entering your state and then just saying like UTMA child maximum age limit, and then it'll probably put you in the right direction of where your state stands on this. I believe Virginia, I'm allowed to hold it up until about 21. But they are going to get access to this eventually. So it is on you too as well to prepare them to receive the funds for this and know how to manage it themselves as well. So true cost of fees. This is very important when just like investing for your own retirement, for your own early retirement, fees are big time and they're big time in investing for your children as well. So just think about it, because if you're going to start investing for your kid right when they're born at 0 years old or 1 month old, they're going to have 18 years essentially of growth ahead of them. If they're using a 529, maybe even more the rest of their life, if you're opening up a Roth IRA or UTMA account. But fees are going to matter when you're investing over the long term. So let's look at an example real quick between 2 different investors. Both are opening 529 accounts. So we're going to use this as a 529 example. But the only main difference is Amber is going to invest with just a basic Vanguard 500 index fund. She's going to open it with Vanguard and manage it herself, to whereas Tony is going to open up a 529 with his state plan. And he's going to use what's called an age-based management fund, which we'll show a little bit more in detail later. But these funds come with a little bit higher expense ratio. It's 0.5 percentage point compared to Amber's 0.4%. And then both of their portfolios are going to return 8% a year. And as you'll see, their total value, Amber's portfolio for her child grew almost $10,000 more. How is that the case? Well, if we break it down, let's go look specifically at the examples. They both invested 400 months over 18 years. They both achieved an 8% annual return, but the fees is the main important thing that we're looking at right here. Since Amber's managing it essentially on her own, she doesn't have a management advisor, and she's just investing in a 500 index fund that has a 0.04% expense ratio. That's the only fee she's paying. Tony, on the other hand, has a higher fee fund, which is a half a percentage point. So although they both had an annual return before fees of 8%, once you deduct these fees from that return, you'll see Amber's real return was 7.96 to Tony's 7.5% a year, which over time resulted in Amber only losing about $800 to fees, but Tony lost over $10,000 in fees. And this is going to compound even more if this gets stretched to 21 years for a UTMA account, or if it's a Roth IRA for their child that they're opening up. This is going to keep compounding even more. And if you're investing even more, you're going to see these numbers really go crazy with the difference in fees. But it's hard to notice fees, their kind of effect on our portfolio in the short term. You're not going to notice that half a percentage point really on your portfolio every year. When you log in and see like a $50 fee, $75 fee, it's going to seem small at the time, but over the course of years, it really eats away at it. And $10,000, if you think about it, if this is a 529 account, 18 years, that could be a whole essentially semester's worth of tuition for their child that got lost to fees because they chose a higher expense fee fund as opposed to the lowest cost option they had. So it definitely, there is extreme value in looking at your fund's fees when setting these accounts up so you can get the biggest bang for your buck in the long term for your child. Let's do a demonstration real quick. I'm going to show Vanguard's 529 plan and also my own state's plan, the Virginia 529. Let me check these questions real quick. Make sure that, okay, I'll get back. So I'm going to go over the fund options for both Vanguard and the Virginia 529, as well as the fees. So to show you how you can see, how you can dissect these fees. And I'm going to just Google it. So I'm going to act like this is going to allow you guys to walk through on your own as well. So I'm just going to go to Google and do all of this from scratch so you can follow it as well. Fund options. This is going to give me all of the investment options that I have for Vanguard's 529 account. So I'm just going to click on their very first option. And you'll see that they actually offer individual index funds that you can, they think they offer 20 funds that you can invest in yourself. These are your main funds, the S&P 500, your growth funds, mid cap, small cap, total stock market. They have an international market as well. They've got bonds as well. So you can invest in these individual funds if you'd like to, or you can invest in what those age-based options are. So let's click on that and see what that looks like real quick. Expand this. So this is almost like a target date retirement fund that many of us have in our retirement accounts. So when we invest in a target date retirement fund, where that portfolio is essentially going to rebalance itself over time to fit our risk tolerance and become less risky as we get closer to retirement. An age-based fund is going to do the exact same thing for your child. And as your child, as she ages 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, this pie is going to start getting a little bit more, or is going to get less aggressive over time. And it's going to start getting their portfolio more conservative as they get closer to reaching college age, to where they can't really have those big hits in the market shoot down their value of their portfolio. And if we look into these target enrollment funds, you can just pick the good thing is you can just pick the year based off of when you believe your child is going to go to college. So for any children born right now, this is essentially what you would do, the 2038, 2039 fund. In the overview, we'll see that expense ratio, 0.14. That's okay for a target or a kind of like an age-based option. And if we dive into the portfolio and management a little bit more, we'll see what actually is this. We'll see what this portfolio is made up of. So it's actually made up of 4 different funds: a total stock market index fund, a total international stock market index fund, a total bond market index fund, and a total international bond market index fund. So this is going to, once again, this is going to self-adjust over time. This is a very aggressive portfolio because this is when the child is just born. They've got 18 years ahead of them, 17 years ahead of them for growth. So they're going to be in a more aggressive portfolio, to where, let's say you've got a 15-year-old in high school who's about 3 years away from college. They're going to be, what's down here, let's say 15 to 16. They're only a couple years away. If we go into their portfolio, see what it's made of, you'll see that it was a massive transition away from where it was about like 97% stocks for our newborn child. It's now only about 20% stocks, and the rest is essentially bonds. So it reallocated itself over time as the child aged. And it's a really nice option to pick if you don't want to manage your child's funds, and you don't want to pick these individual funds. You can just pick these age-based options, and this will kind of rebalance itself for you over time, and you won't have to worry about that rebalancing on your end. You can also go to the fees and minimums tab. That's where you're going to see your expense ratio again, 0.14. Still pretty small compared to the 0.5 percentage point that I mentioned in the one example. And I mentioned that because let's now go to my state's plan, the Virginia 529. So first option, and you can do this for any of your states. So if you live in Nevada or Washington State or Ohio, just go to Google and just type in Ohio 529 or offers, to be able to check out their site as well. So I'm on the Virginia 529 page. I'm going to go to invest, and it shows me I have investment options, the portfolio performance, and then fees and expenses. This is the very first thing I'm going to go to, fees. I want to know how much this essentially account is going to charge me to invest my money. So if we scroll down, here we go, portfolio types. So they have basic index funds like S&P 500, total stock market. They have pretty low costs. But if we look at their target enrollment, those age-based options, that's where they're getting close to that 0.5 percentage point that I used in my example for Tony. So in their examples for 2039, 2036, you'll see there's a management fee of 0.42 with an administration fee of 0.09 for a total expense fee of a little over 0.5 percentage point. And it goes a little bit down as it gets closer to the graduation expected date. Not sure why exactly it does that, but even still, for like a 10-year-old, 0.39 is much higher than that 0.14 that you are seeing in Vanguard by going with your state's plan instead of Vanguard per se, or a Schwab, where they might offer lower cost funds. So always go to your state's plan to see these fees. You don't want to get in any of these plans that are charging you more than you have to pay in fees, because they are going to add up over time. So definitely take the extra little step in checking out the fees in your state's plan if you're kind of going between, if you want to open up between a state and Vanguard. For my example, for my son, we actually ended up opening up with Vanguard and not our state. So we didn't necessarily need the $4,000 state tax deduction for him. We wanted the lowest cost fees possible, and Vanguard offered that over our state's plan. That's where we wanted to save for him in regards to the 529. So option 3, taxable brokerage account. This is a very popular one because this is almost like where parents are going instead of UTMA accounts because they're scared of their child getting full access to the account at 18 to 25. So what they're doing is they're actually just opening a taxable brokerage in their name and transferring assets to their child later in life when they see fit, at the age that they see fit. So let's talk about the pros and cons a little bit. The pros, you completely control the account and decide if and when the child gets the money. So unlike where a UTMA account where the child owns the account, you control this account fully. You get to decide what to do at all times. And now talk about that lifetime gift tax exemption. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the UTMA slide that we're going to talk about later. So you are allowed, let's say your child's 22 years old and you've saved up $150,000 in a taxable brokerage account, and you're finally confident that they are at a maturity level that you're not concerned with them receiving money. You can gift them less than or equal to essentially $15,000 a year, completely tax-free. So I can take immediately 15 grand off that $150,000 brokerage, and gift that to them completely tax-free. I don't have to worry about any type of reporting, this gift tax exemption. But if I were to essentially contribute or gift them $1 more, anything above $15,000, that's going to incur what's called the gift tax exemption. Now look at this highlighted point, because this is kind of where it gets complicated a little bit. Oops, sorry. Every single one of us, and if you're married, this applies to both you and your spouse as well, has a lifetime gift tax exemption of $11.58 million. What the heck does that mean? That essentially means you can gift up to $11.58 million in your entire lifetime, and it is exempt from paying taxes. So when you think about this, really, a lot of us, anytime we're going to be gifting money, there's a good chance we're not really ever going to be paying taxes on this, because we had that lifetime gift tax exemption. So let's go to an even crazier amount. Let's say I had $5 million in a taxable brokerage account, and I wanted to give my son $3 million of it. I can essentially transfer the $3 million to him, but that $3 million is then going to get subtracted from my lifetime gift tax exemption, to where now my gift tax exemption is going to be, what's that, 958, $8.58 million left on my exemption. So going forward for the rest of my life, I've got $8.58 million of exemption left. So hopefully that kind of explained a little bit too of this lifetime gift tax exemption. I would still consult with the CPA if you're ever getting close to gifting kind of around that $15,000 mark per year to anybody, just so you know you're kind of dotting your T's and crossing, or dotting your I's and crossing your T's all right. But that's kind of that lifetime gift tax exemption. And the last pro is you can transfer the investments without having to sell first, which is awesome. So instead of where most times, if you were like opening and creating new accounts for yourself, you would have to sell a lot of your stocks or index funds and then transfer the money and then purchase it over. In this case, you can just, and all of if you open this up with Vanguard or Schwab, they'll be able to do this for you. But you can essentially just transfer your investments to them without incurring any sales, any capital gains, any of that. And your brokerage will handle that perfectly fine for you. You don't have to worry about selling. The only cons for a taxable brokerage that I've been able to think of so far is taxes. Since you're the owner of the account, the earnings are going to count against you. So you'll have to owe any taxes on dividends that you receive. If you do any sales, you'll have to pay capital gains at your rate. So you'll just have to be mindful that you're paying, although that this money is, you might have earmarked for your child, since it's in your name, this is going to count as your money and you'll have to pay taxes for it. So option 4, the last option, retirement account. This is a great option for every child. I definitely recommend, if you have any child that's working, open them a Roth IRA immediately. If you can get them starting in retirement, the earlier the better. They're going to thank you so much for this later. But if you want to open a Roth IRA for your child, here's what you have to kind of follow. They must have earned income. There's no way around this. You can't have like a 7-year-old child who's not working at all and you contribute $6,000 a year for them. That's not going to work. They have to have an income, whether that's through regular employment or self-employment income. So a couple examples I use, like if they're lifeguarding in the summers, if they're babysitting, if they're working at the mall, wherever the case may be, if they have earned income, they can open up a Roth IRA and start contributing. Or if you own your own business per se, you can employ them to work for your business and give them earnings that way. So it's going to be kind of a double benefit where you'll be able to write off expenses for your business by paying your child, and your child then gets to essentially invest that money. So you keep the money in the family, which is really nice. One really cool way I saw a parent do this was they had a pretty big social media brand. They're have their own tax firm, and they weren't kind of hip on all the new social media, especially TikTok. So they hired their daughter, who was a teenager, I think like 13, to be their social media like analyst or manager. And they got paid to essentially figure out TikTok's algorithms, what was working, how to create videos for them. And they were able to pay her and then open up a Roth IRA for her and then do that kind of double where they got to write off the expenses and then she got to save for retirement. So it was nice. And Roth IRAs, this is just like for us as well. You can only contribute up to $6,000 a year or less than that based off of what they earn. What that means is if they're only earning $3,000 a year mowing lawns, they can only contribute $3,000. You can't essentially invest 3,000 of your own money for them to get that $6,000. They have to be making, if they're going to max out at 6,000, they have to make at least $6,000 in a year. So if they're making anything less, which is fine, it's not a bad thing per se. So let's say they only made $2,000 a year shoveling snow or cutting lawns at like 12 years old. They're still putting $2,000 away to compound over time. So it's nice, but you just have to be mindful of that based off of their earnings. So last subject, I just wanted to show you guys kind of a picture of our daughter who was just born and how we've been building for her. So this is Scarlett. She was born on, was it 3:55 a.m. on Monday morning. We're definitely excited. We're super excited to finally have her here. This is kid number 2 for us. And you'll see in this top left corner, this available balance. We've been saving money to eventually invest in her UTMA account just in a simple savings account. So this is a screenshot of her Ally savings account. We were putting in like $400 a month for her for the past couple months. Also, we lump summed a little bit from our emergency fund. So she's got about $3,500 ready to get transferred over when we get her social security number. And we're going to invest it all in VTSAX. So she's going to be immediately invested in over 3,000 of the largest US companies that are publicly traded. And she's immediately going to be essentially an equity owner at almost 1 month old, I think, at the time when we'll get that social security number. And she'll own Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, Tesla, Berkshire, JP Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, Visa Inc. This is essentially why we do it. This is why I love this topic, wealth building for children. All of us have goals to build wealth, but eventually if you're going to be starting a family, you're going to want to pass this wealth down. You're going to want your children to benefit from this as well. So this is us getting started ahead of time and giving her and our son a leg up. So we're definitely excited to have that, the UTMA account for her. And I did promise I'll show you guys how to open that account real quick. I'm going to go to Google, open Vanguard UTMA, and I'll walk you through the main points that you'll have to be mindful for. So you're going to click on this first option, Saving for College, Vanguard UTMA. You're going to see this big red button that says Open a Vanguard UTMA. This is your custodial account. So are you registered at Vanguard? If you don't have an account with Vanguard, you'll just essentially click No, and you'll essentially register, create a username, password. Otherwise, if you do have an account, just insert your information. It'll log you in. Oh, maybe wrong password. Sorry. Okay. So then you're going to get to essentially the main opening account screens, how to fund this. So if the first option is opening a new account. If you haven't opened before, this is where we're pretty much all going to get started. We have a child. We're going to open up a new account for them. Then it's going to ask you how you want to fund this account. Your 3 options. You're going to transfer it from your bank. This is like your checking or savings account. Is it going to be a rollover from a 401k? This isn't really going to be for a UGMA. This would be like if you opened up an IRA and you wanted to roll over 401k money. Or this could apply, transferring investments from another financial firm. So if you have like a UTMA or 529 with Fidelity, but want actually to open up an account with Vanguard, you can select this option and start that process there. But we're just going to say electronic bank transfer. We're going to contribute from our own money. So click that. So this is just a short checklist. Hit continue. So you're going to get a couple options: retirement, general investing. This is your general investing means taxable brokerage account. Small business. This is what you'll have if you're a business owner or self-employed. I have a SEP IRA for my online kind of earnings, but you're going to be looking at college savings or investing for a minor for the UTMA. So Vanguard has their 529 plan. You can go with that option, or for this purpose, we're going to be doing UTMA because this is what we're going to be doing for my daughter. So just click UTMA. Scroll back up, hit continue. Okay. So if you have an account essentially already open, they're going to show this, but you're going to click open a new account for your new child. Then you're going to hit continue. Primary investment objective, just select, and you can just select any of these. It's not really going to be the biggest deal. I always just select growth at first and then income. But then it's going to ask you for the source of funds, how to fund this. I always just say salary because I link all of my accounts just to my checking account, and then it just gets funded that way. But this is the main important thing. This tripped me up when I first opened it for my son. It says enter the owner information for the minor. So remember, this is a UTMA account. They are the owner of the account. So you're going to be you're going to essentially be, this is where you're going to put your child's information. So I'm going to go ahead as if I'm opening it up for my daughter. I'm going to use a fictitious social security number just to show you kind of how this would work. When was she born? 05, 31, 2021. Gift state, just select the state that you are currently residing in. And then citizenship, you do have to be a US citizen, I believe, to open a UTMA account as well. It can got the main points on how to open up a UTMA. I can walk through this with you as well. If anybody has like questions and answers, want to DM me specifically. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That was a little bit longer presentation than I normally do with the walkthrough. I'll be here for about 5 to maybe about 15 minutes doing questions, and I got to go help out with the little one. I will also read through the questions in here, but feel free to ask them. And I'll just, as you guys ask them, I'll answer them as I can.
Oh, oh Lord, mercy. You finished it, Mom? To everyone. You finished it, Mom?
Forget to mute your mics, guys. I'll go ahead and mute these. So you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. I just muted everybody. Do other brokerages offer age-based options? They do. So Schwab, Fidelity, you're going to have the same age-based option. So you don't have to choose Vanguard. You can definitely use another brokerage as well.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So for the UTMA account, you were saying, I don't know if you could pull up that slide about where if you get dividends, you don't get charged. I believe taxes is what you said on the first 1,500 and or 1,050.
Yep.
Does that renew every year, or is that throughout?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the nice part. It's not going to essentially just like keep adding to it. It'll reset every year.
Okay, so that's why you were saying, obviously, when you get into a higher amount in the account, you'll eventually pass the dividend of 2,100. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so if you eventually get to where you're like, I have $100,000 in the UTMA and you've got like a dividend yield of 3%, you're going to be getting $3,000 just for
$3,000.
So that delta of $900 is going to get taxed at your rate.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Eric, this is going to be posted in the Wealth Squad University probably later this week, so you can watch that there as well. For the child Roth IRA, does the job they have to be for a licensed business, or is it okay if they're babysitting for a family friend who's paying them? So this is a good question, and I don't want to give you a guaranteed answer because once again, I would always consult with a CPA with this kind of stuff, so you're making sure this is you're fully legal on this. If they're babysitting one time and they're getting like $40, that can be hard to prove that they're making income. But if they're babysitting like every weekend, every 2 weeks, and making a couple $100 a month, you're going to be it's going to be easy to prove. You might have to, like I said, go with the CPA and figure out the best way to how you're going to track that. Because most of the time you're probably the kid's going to be getting cash or checks. So you might have to create your own ledger, like an Excel sheet where you're essentially adding what your earnings are yourself, and just for proof. But definitely consult with a CPA. Don't just dive in there if they're not making too much money. Just be careful with that. How is this better than shoeboxing the money? So this is almost just like invest. If you're going to just shoebox money and save it, you're losing money to inflation. So if you're going to save money in a shoebox for 18 years, while yes, you may have saved cash for them, that purchasing power is getting eroded every single year. So although you're technically saving money for them, that money is losing purchasing power every year. So if you're not investing that money in a 529, in a UTMA, in a taxable brokerage into appreciating assets like index funds and stocks that are growing usually at a higher long-term rate than inflation, that shoebox money is just going to be money getting eaten alive slowly. It's almost like it's molding in there due to inflation. So don't just have your money sitting in cash. The book that I'm actually writing on essentially this, that dives into this more, that's the number one financial mistake that parents make with their kids, is they save it just in cash. It's not, I'll say, quote unquote mistake. It's still good to save money, but it's the worst thing you can do essentially when saving money for them, because it's not growing at all and it's losing value. Could I open any of these accounts for my niece and nephew, or would it be better to get life insurance? I'm not going to speak on life insurance because that's not my subject matter of expertise to talk on, but you can open these accounts for your niece and nephew. Once again, you've got to be very careful with if you're doing a UTMA, I would talk it over with their parents because it's going to affect their financial aid big time later. I would actually get to the point where if you're going to have that conversation with them, I would try to gear it towards them opening the UTMA so they control it. But you can open up a 529 for them, but you're just going to need their social security number. So you're going to have that conversation with their parents to get that account started. If I open a 529 for my child, can grandma also contribute and get the 12K deduction? Not sure where the deduction came from, or only parent. So you can have other people contribute to their 529s. This is actually a good question, Ursula. If you DM me, I'm going to ask my tax guy about this. If you have to have essentially the account opened in your name to get that tax deduction in the state, because this is assuming you're using a state 529 to get that tax deduction. So shoot me. I want to confirm this with you. You can DM me at TheWealthDad in the Discord, and I'm going to get an answer specifically for. I don't want to give you a half-assed answer that I don't know if is 100% correct. Tax benefits of a UTMA. There's not really any. The biggest benefit of the UTMA is the child has essentially full control of how they wish to spend it. So you're not going to get the tax benefits of tax-free growth. You're also not going to get tax-free withdrawals. So there isn't really that many. I can't really think of any tax benefits of a UTMA. The biggest pro to a UTMA is kind of that complete control and not restricting the money towards college purposes. Yeah, no, I just thought about that. We might have to edit that video. There was some info on there. Hopefully you guys don't steal my stuff. Curious, why did you go UTMA? Okay. Instagram, let me put that in the chat. So why did I go UTMA instead of 529? So I initially opened the 529 because it's the first account that I heard of, and I knew I went to college. My wife's still in school right now, and I know the benefits currently of what a college education does for one's earning potential over time. It definitely has increased my earning potential, but in all honesty, my kids are at the earliest 17 years away for my son. My daughter 18 years away. I don't believe college is going to look anything remotely similar to what it's going to look like today. I don't think it's going to be as long. So where we have the traditional 4-year institution, once again, these are my opinions. So definitely don't take this with a grain of salt. This is just my mentality towards college. I don't think the 4-year college degree is going to be the same. I believe it's going to be specialized 2-year programs, kind of just like master's degrees, but at a bachelor level. So I think the time at universities is going to go significantly down. And with that, the cost, I believe, is going to go down. I also believe that if it doesn't and costs do keep going up, that kids will just opt for community colleges instead, or some of these companies, like a lot of tech companies now are removing bachelor's degrees from their or their requirements to apply. And they actually, Google now has their own certificates that kids can go. I think that it's like a 6-month certificate for a lot of some of their basic entry-level IT work. So I just believe we came down to the kind of decision that college was going to look so different in 18 years that we didn't want the money tied specifically towards that. We had confidence in that if they do end up going to college later, then we can educate them later on, kind of like on grants, scholarships, teach them how to work for companies that'll also pay for your tuition. So like Chipotle, that's a great example. Chipotle, after I believe 3 months of working, reimburses tuition almost up to the full extent for certain business and IT degrees. So there's definitely a lot of programs out there. So what we really wanted is our kids to essentially just get way ahead of the compound interest game. And we wanted them to inherit like multiple $100,000 taxable brokerage by the time they're 18 to 21, so that they can buy that first house if they want to. They can house hack and get a duplex and rent it out if they want to. They can build a business if they want, or they can do nothing with it and just let it keep growing. And over time, whatever interest that comes up, that's what they want to use the money for. Or they can also use the money for college. It's not restricted that you can't use it for college. But that's why we ended up going with the UTMA over the 529 for our kids. If our kids were 15 and 16, I probably wouldn't have done this, because I don't think college is going to change that differently in only like a 3-year period. So I probably would have stuck with the 529 because it's most likely going to stay pretty similar. But we were just very confident, because we're almost 2 decades away from this point, that it's just going to look different, we believe. So I'm just going to say Chipotle. Take a look at, I would Google like Chipotle tuition reimbursement, and they list out what kind of qualifies for their tuition reimbursement, the type of degrees that you can garner from them. But they've got a fantastic tuition reimbursement program for college students or anybody that's working at Chipotle. It doesn't even have to just be for young kids. I also believe Starbucks, I'll put this in here as well. I believe Starbucks has a tuition reimbursement plan. Our next door neighbor's son, I think, is like 19 or 20 and is a barista and is getting some type of tuition reimbursement from Starbucks as well. So take a look at those two and see if they work out as well. I think that's the last of the questions, unless anybody has one last one. I just want to thank you guys. Here's one more. I'll do this last one. If you go to college and don't use the 529, is there a way to get the money or redirect the money? Yeah. So let's say you've got a kid who's 20, didn't go to college, but you have a kid who's like 17 and you know is about to go to college. You can very easily change the beneficiary to the next child. That's once again, major benefit of it. Change it to them, and then the 529 money can be used for them. If you're in the instance that nobody is going to be using the 529, you can just withdraw the money, but you'll have to pay that 10% on earnings, that penalty on earnings. You won't have to pay it on your contributions, but you will have to be mindful of that if you're just going to end up withdrawing, because no one's going to use it. So thank you, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll work with the admin to get this posted in the Wealth Squad University, get some of the stuff watermarked so no one steals my stuff. I noticed that when I was doing it as well. But hope you guys enjoyed, and have a good night, everybody.